I am the company chef that served them tea and the half-eaten smoked salmon, and the person who vacuums the crumbs of their million-dollar decisions off the carpet. They talk over me as if I'm a piece of furniture. They reveal their affairs, their tax dodges, and their hatred for their peers right in front of me. Why wouldn't they? Ghosts can't talk. But they forgot one thing. Ghosts have ears. And on a Tuesday morning in April, my phone was sitting on a mahogany sideboard, recording the exact moment their empire began to rot from the inside out. My name is Sarah Michael. My day starts at 4:30 a.m. While the city of Chicago is still a gray blur of fog and streetlights, I'm hauling 30-pound crates of glassware into the service elevator. People think catering is just serving food. It's not. It's logistics. It's war. If a fork is spotted or a napkin is folded wrong, Theodore Lin, the CEO, will make sure your agency never works in this zip code again. I remember the first time I saw him. He looked like he was carved out of ice. He didn't look at me, he looked through me. To him, I was a budget line item that needed to be minimized. But then, there was Arthur Henderson, the CFO. Arthur was different. He was the kind of man who would stop mid-sentence during a billion-dollar merger just to say, "Thank you, Sarah. That coffee smells wonderful." He was the heart of the company, the one who actually cared about the thousands of employees whose lives were changed by the numbers on his ledger. He was the only reason I didn't quit when the three princes, the VPs of sales, marketing, and tech, started treating the catering staff like their personal servants. For weeks, the atmosphere in the building had been shifting. The usual boardroom banter had been replaced by hushed whispers and doors that locked from the inside. The three princes were always huddled together, looking at Arthur Henderson with a strange, predatory hunger. I noticed the little things. The way they'd stop talking the second I walked in with the afternoon tea tray. The way Theodore Lin's face would twitch whenever Arthur mentioned the upcoming annual audit. I started feeling a knot in my stomach. In this building, silence usually meant someone was about to lose their job. I just didn't realize it was going to be the only man who knew my name. I was struggling too. My rent had just gone up, my sister needed help with her tuition, and I was working 16-hour shifts. I was tired. And when you're that tired, you make mistakes. You leave things behind. It was 10:15 a.m. The quarterly strategy meeting. I was in the room early, setting up the executive power lunch. I was using my phone to record a voice memo of the inventory I needed. We were low on the specific brand of Earl Grey Theodore demanded. I hit record and started whispering into the mic as I counted the boxes in the sideboard cabinet. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors swung open. Theodore, the other princes, and a man I didn't recognize, a lawyer, by the look of his suit, strode in. They were already arguing. My heart jumped into my throat. I wasn't supposed to be in there once the doors closed. I panicked. I shoved the tray under my arm, straightened my apron, and hurried out the service door. It wasn't until the door clicked shut that I felt my pocket. It was empty. My phone was on the sideboard. And it was still recording. The moment the service door clicked shut, the world seemed to lose its sound. I stood in the narrow, dimly lit hallway, my hand hovering over my empty pocket. My phone. My entire life was on that device, photos of my family, my banking apps, and right now a live recording of a room I was legally forbidden from entering during a blackout session. I reached for the handle, but it was already locked. These doors only opened from the inside during meetings to ensure total executive privacy. I felt a cold drop of sweat slide down my spine. If I knocked, I'd be fired on the spot. If I waited, someone might find it. That's when I saw him. Elias Sealer. He was the head of security, but everyone called him the Fixer. He didn't wear a uniform. He wore a suit that cost more than my car, watching me with eyes that looked like two pieces of flint. "Is there a problem, Sarah?" he asked. His voice was like sandpaper on silk. "No, Mr. Sealer," I stammered, clutching my empty tray. "Just checking the lock." He didn't move. He just stared. I knew then that he wasn't just security. He was Theodore Lin's personal shadow. And if he saw me loitering, the game was over before it even began. For 45 minutes, I paced the kitchen like a caged animal. Every time the service elevator dinged, I jumped. I tried to act normal, filling water pitchers, polishing silverware, but my hands were shaking so hard the forks rattled against the porcelain. Finally, the light above the boardroom door turned from red to green. The meeting was over. I didn't wait. I grabbed a fresh carafe of water and pushed through the doors before the executives had even fully cleared the room. The air in the room was thick with the smell of expensive cigars and heavy tension. Theodore and the three princes were huddled in the corner, their voices low and urgent. I didn't look at them. I kept my head down, moving toward the sideboard. There it was. My phone, lying exactly where I'd left it, camouflaged against the dark wood. My heart was thundering so loud I was sure they could hear it. I swiped the phone into my apron pocket in one fluid motion, replaced the water carafe, and turned to leave. Sarah. Theodore Lynn's voice stopped me mid-step. I froze. The coffee was cold today, he said, not even looking up from his briefcase. Don't let it happen again. Yes, sir, I whispered, and I bolted. I was busy cleaning and arranging the kitchen that I didn't listen to the voice recording at work. I didn't even look at my phone until I was 3 bus stops away, tucked into the back corner of the 606 line. I plugged in my earbuds, my breath hitching in my throat. At first, it was just the sound of shuffling papers and the clinking of ice. Then, Theodore's voice came through, crystal clear. Henderson thinks the audit is standard, Theodore said. He sounded amused. He has no idea I've already authorized the wire transfers using his digital signature. By Friday, the $15 million will be in the Cayman account, and the trail will lead straight to his home office. I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't just talking about a merger. They were talking about a frame job. They were going to send Arthur Henderson, the only man who treated me like a human being, to prison for the rest of his life. And I was the only person in the world who knew. The bus ride home felt like it took a lifetime. Every time someone glanced my way, I felt a jolt of electricity hit my chest. Did they know? Could they hear the recording through my headphones? I walked the last 3 blocks to my apartment with my head down, clutching my bag to my ribs. When I finally locked my door, triple bolted it, which I never do, I sat on the floor and cried. But the tears didn't last long. Panic was replaced by a cold, hard realization. I was holding a bomb. If Theodore found out I had this recording, I wouldn't just lose my job. I'd lose everything. I listened to the recording again, and then a 3rd time. They mentioned Project Icarus and a firm called Green Holdings. I'm a server, not an accountant. I didn't know what a shell company was, but I knew who did. Leo. Leo had been the lead analyst at Zenith Global until 6 months ago. He was brilliant, kind, and most importantly, he'd been fired by Theodore for asking too many questions about the company's offshore accounts. I had his number from when I used to sneak him extra sandwiches during the late-night shifts. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over the call button. If I involved Leo, there was no going back. I called him, and he picked on the 2nd ring. I told him I needed to see him urgently. We met at a 24-hour diner on the edge of the city, the kind of place where the light bulbs hum and the air smells like old grease. Leo looked tired, dark circles under his eyes and a nervous twitch in his hand. When I played the recording for him, his face went from pale to ghostly white. Sarah, do you have any idea what this is? He whispered, leaning so close I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. I know it's a frame job, I said. It's more than that, Leo replied. These wire transfers, they aren't just stealing from the company. They're stealing from the pension funds. Thousands of workers, janitors, drivers, servers like you, their retirement money is being sucked into these accounts. And they've rigged it so that when the FBI comes knocking, every single digital fingerprint belongs to Arthur Henderson. Leo looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. If we take this to the police now, Theodore's lawyers will bury it before the sun comes up. They'll claim you doctored the audio. We need more. We need the actual transfer logs from Theodore's private server. And there's only one way to get them. The plan was insane. I had to go back in. Tomorrow was the Founders Gala, the biggest event of the year. The entire building would be swarming with security, but as the head of the catering team, I had access to the executive floor after hours to set up the breakfast service. Leo gave me a small black device. Plug this into the router in Theodore's office. It'll bypass the encryption and let me download the logs remotely. You just need 60 seconds. The next morning, I walked into Vane Global with the device hidden in the lining of my blazer. I felt like I was wearing a neon sign that said traitor. As I stepped into the service elevator, the doors started to close, but a hand suddenly shot out and stopped them. The doors slid back open. It was Elias Sealer, the fixer. He didn't say a word. He just stepped into the small elevator and stood right next to me. I could hear his slow, rhythmic breathing. He looked down at my hands, which were white-knuckled around my tray, and then he looked me straight in the eye. "You look nervous today, Sarah," he said. "Is there something on your mind?" The elevator ride felt like it lasted a decade. Elias Sealer didn't move. He didn't blink. He just stood there, his presence filling the small space like a suffocating fog. Every time the elevator dinged on a lower floor, I prayed anyone would get on. But no one did. "I'm just worried about the gala, Mr. Sealer," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "It's a lot of pressure. The salmon has to be perfect." Sealer tilted his head, a slow, predatory smile creeping across his face. "The salmon? Or the secrets?" My heart stopped. My hand instinctively twitched toward the blazer pocket where Leo's device was hidden. But then, the elevator chimed. "Floor 42. The executive suite." "Don't burn anything, Sarah," Sealer whispered as I practically ran out of the doors. I didn't look back, but I felt his eyes on me until the doors hissed shut. The 42nd floor was eerie. Downstairs, I could hear the faint, muffled thumping of a jazz band playing for the gala guests. But up here, it was all shadows and silence. I had 10 minutes before the security sweep began. I made my way to Theodore's office. The heavy double doors were locked, but I'd spent 5 years watching the cleaning crews. I knew the service code for the maintenance panel. 4-9-2-1. The lock clicked. The office was massive, overlooking the glittering lights of Chicago. It smelled of expensive bourbon and old money. I didn't have time to admire the view. I scrambled under Theodore's desk, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I found the router, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped Leo's device. I plugged it in. A small blue light began to flicker. 10%. 20%. "Come on, Leo," I whispered. Suddenly, I heard footsteps. Heavy, confident strides coming down the hallway. It wasn't the security guard's rhythmic pace. It was Theodore Lynn. And he wasn't alone. I didn't have time to get out. I crawled further under the massive mahogany desk, pulling the executive chair in as close as I could. The doors swung open. "I don't care about the shareholders, Arthur." Theodore's voice boomed, echoing in the empty room. I saw 2 pairs of shoes stop just inches from my hiding spot. One was Theodore's polished Italian leather. The other was Arthur Henderson's sensible Oxfords. "Theodore, the numbers don't add up," Arthur said, his voice trembling with a mix of confusion and betrayal. $15 million has vanished from the pension fund. If the audit goes through tomorrow, the authorities will see my signature on the transfers. I didn't sign those, Theodore. Someone hacked my credentials. I heard the sound of liquid hitting glass. Theodore was pouring a drink. "Arthur, you've always been too soft. You worry about the workers, the little people. But the world belongs to those who take. You're going to take the fall for this. And by tomorrow afternoon, you'll be the most hated man in the city." I looked at the blue light on the device. 95%. 100%. It was done. Leo had the files. But I was still trapped under the desk of a man who was casually destroying a life just 3 inches above my head. I stayed under that desk for what felt like an eternity, listening to Theodore Lynn dismantle Arthur's life piece by piece. When they finally left the room to head down to the gala, I didn't wait. I grabbed Leo's device and bolted for the service stairs. My heart was a drum in my ears. Downstairs, the gala was in full swing. Diamonds sparkled under the chandeliers, and Theodore was on stage, a champagne flute in his hand, preparing to give his Visionary of the Year speech. I saw Leo in the back of the room, disguised as a waiter. He gave me a single, sharp nod. He had the files. As Theodore began to speak about integrity and the future of the workforce, the massive projector screen behind him, intended to show a sizzle reel of the company's success, flickered. But it didn't show the company logo. It showed the wire transfer logs. $15 million, moving in real time from the pension fund to a private account in Theodore Lynn's name. And then, the audio played. Not the polished speech Theodore was giving now, but the recording from my phone, the cold, calculating voice of a man admitting to framing his friend. The silence that fell over that room was absolute. Theodore froze, his glass halfway to his lips. He looked out into the crowd of his peers, his investors, and his employees. And then his eyes found me. I was standing by the kitchen doors, still in my server's apron, holding a tray of empty glasses. For the first time in 5 years, Theodore Lynn really saw me. And he knew it was over. The next hour was a blur of blue lights and sirens. Theodore and the 3 princes were led out through the lobby in handcuffs, past the very janitors and security guards they had spent years ignoring. Arthur Henderson didn't lose his job. Today, he's the CEO of a company that actually looks its employees in the eye. As for me, I didn't want a promotion to some corner office. I used the whistleblower reward to finish my degree and open my own catering firm. But I kept one thing from my old life, my server's apron. It hangs in my office as a reminder. People think power is about the title on your door or the zeros in your bank account. It's not. Power is about who's listening when you think no one is there. In every boardroom, every luxury hotel, and every high-rise office, there are invisible people like me. We see the secrets you hide. We hear the lies you tell. And sometimes, all it takes is one accidental recording to bring an empire of glass crashing down. Because in the end, the people who clear the table are the ones who know exactly what was served. If you've ever felt invisible at work, remember, you see more than they think. If you enjoyed this deep dive into The Invisible Witness, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the front lines of the corporate world. And tell me in the comments, what's the craziest thing you've ever overheard while someone thought you weren't listening? Until next time, keep your ears open and your head high. This has been the Workplace Whisperer Tales.